When I am down and oh my soul's
Listen.
weary, when trouble
To listen is a requirement in doing.
my heart burdened be,
It is not only a requirement actually, but a need.
still and wait here in the silence until
Listening is a need before we can start to respond to what we hear. Lenten season is a time of listening.
you raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up.
The Mass gives us food for listening this Lenten season.
I am strong when I am on your shoulders.
Lenten season is a time of listening. It is a good time to listen to our hearts. But why listen? Because when we listen to whoever and whatever needs our response will have depth. According to studies, listening is important to communication skills. A study shows that in a day, we spend 70 to 80% in some form of communication. In a day, we spend about 9% writing and 16% reading, 30% speaking, and 45% listening. Studies also show that most of us are poor and inefficient listeners. Why? The reasons behind are outlined in the levels of our listening. The first level is ignoring. We brush aside what we hear. The second level is pretending to listen. We give eye contact, but we don't actually listen. The third level is selective listening. We pick out only what we want to hear and ignore the unpleasant one. The fourth level is attentive listening. The kind of attention we give to cell phone conversations, class lectures. The fifth level of listening is emphatic listening. We go beyond words that are spoken. We try to get the feelings. We listen between words. It is being present to the whole person. It is listening with a heart. The sixth level of listening is active listening. It is active listening with a heart and translating this into action. It is attentive, emphatic, and action-oriented listening. When we actively listen daily, especially this Lenten season, we will celebrate the feast of the resurrection of Jesus well. Friends, our readings today remind us of the importance of listening in Christian life. In the Transfiguration story of Mark, chapter 9, verses 2 to 10, Jesus, together with Peter, James, and John, were on a high mountain. Up there in the mountain, Jesus was transfigured before the three disciples, and there appeared to them Elijah and Moses. Elijah and Moses conversed with Jesus. When this happened, Peter, being terrified, didn't know what to say to Jesus, told Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." A moment came when a cloud appeared and cast a shadow over them. Then from a cloud came a voice and said, "This is my chosen son. Listen to him." To listen is Shema, the classic Hebrew confession of faith, describing who God is and what one's duty is towards Him. Shema is also translated Hear. Hear, O Israel. The Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Shema appears before all the commands of God, beginning with loving God with one's whole heart, with one's whole being, and with one's whole strength. Before understanding God's commands, one has to Shema, to listen, to hear. Before doing what the command of God is, that is to love, one has to Shema. To listen is a requirement in doing. It is not only a requirement actually, but a need. Israelites can never do what God commanded them to do unless they listen to Him. It is the same for us today. Listening, an active listening, I must say, is a need before we can start to respond to what we hear. Abraham, in the first reading, is tested of his faith by God. The faith test requires an active listening. God talked to Abraham. Abraham would always reply, "Here I am." God asked Abraham to offer his only son Isaac as a sacrifice on a mountain in the land of Moriah. Abraham did as he was told. Upon seeing the genuine faith of Abraham, and before Abraham would kill his son Isaac as an offering, God stopped him. Abraham truly listened. It must be heartbreakingly difficult to actively do what he heard clearly from God. When we truly listen, there is clarity in the message we hear. The clarity of the message about the truth and the call of what we hear. Sometimes it is heartbreaking to receive the message clearly. Sometimes the clear message is giving joy. Could it be that we ignore what we hear, or we pretend to listen, or we select only what we want to hear because what we hear breaks our heart? Abraham's active listening led him to do what God wants him to do. Yet, he must have felt the pain of killing his son Isaac as a sacrifice for God's sake. But the truth sets us free, right? Abraham's active listening brought him to the next level of the truth of listening, the bearing of fruit, or the rewarding part of listening. Abraham's faith shines in purity. Because of this, God gifted Abraham with many offsprings. He became father of all nations. Many good things come about after we have done what we have listened to. Blessings shall just rain down from heaven. Peace of mind, inner joy, strong faith, more giving, more loving, more peaceful rest at night. If we actively listen to God, we shall be transformed into a person like Abraham who can embrace heartbreaking pain for the love of God. If we actively listen to God, we can also be transformed into the person of Jesus Christ who can freely offer His life on the cross for our sake and who can still love until life's last breath. Paul, in the second reading, consoles Christians who struggles in life due to oppositions and persecutions of living Christian faith. God shall always be with the Christian. Christ shall be their intercessor. For as long as they listen to God and live the call of Christian faith, they have nothing to worry about. My dear friends, the Mass gives us food for listening this Lenten season. It nourishes and gives us strength to continue our efforts to listen actively. Thank you so much. I'll catch you again next weekend. Mahal kayo ng Diyos.
I am on your shore.